Rosa had been pushing the same yellow mop bucket through the halls of Riverside Community College for almost 15 years. Every evening at 6 o'clock, when the last students filtered out and the professors locked their offices, she would clock in and begin her shift. The mathematics building was always her first stop. Something about those classrooms felt different to her. Though she couldn't quite explain why, most people didn't notice Rosa. She was just part of the furniture, like the old wooden desks or the flickering fluorescent lights. Students would rush past her without a glance. Professors would continue their conversations as if she wasn't even there, mopping around their feet while they debated complex theories in the hallway. After 15 years, Rosa had become invisible. And honestly, she preferred it that way. Being invisible meant she could observe without anyone questioning what she was doing. Rosa's shift usually ended around 2 in the morning. The building would be completely silent by then, except for the hum of the heating system and the occasional creak of old pipes. She would work her way through each classroom methodically, empty the trash bins, wipe down the desks, clean the boards. It was simple, repetitive work, the kind of work that lets your mind wander, but Rosa's mind never wandered. Instead, it focused intensely on the whiteboards in each classroom. Every evening, those boards were covered with numbers, symbols, and equations that most people would find completely meaningless. The professors rarely erased them fully. They would leave their day's work up, sometimes for days at a time. Rosa had started noticing patterns in these equations during her first year. At first, she didn't understand any of it. The symbols looked like a foreign language, but something about them called to her. She remembered the exact moment her curiosity turned into something more. It was a Tuesday night, about 3 years into her job. She had been cleaning Professor Chen's classroom when she noticed a simple equation on the corner of the board. It was basic algebra, probably from a remedial class. For some reason, she understood it. The logic made sense to her. She could see how the numbers related to each other, how they balanced like a scale. That night, Rosa did something she had never done before. She pulled out a small notebook from her cleaning cart and copied the equation down. At home, in her tiny studio apartment, she worked through it step by step. When she got the answer, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: pride, accomplishment. The feeling that maybe her brain was capable of more than people assumed. From that night on, Rosa's evening routine changed. She still cleaned every classroom with the same care and attention. But now she also studied. Every equation on every board became her textbook. She would copy them carefully into her growing collection of notebooks. At home, she would spend hours trying to understand them, to solve them, to figure out the logic behind each step. The funny thing was, Rosa had barely finished elementary school. She had grown up in a small village where education wasn't considered important for girls. Her father needed her to help with the family store. Her mother needed her at home with the younger children. By the time she was 12, she had stopped going to school altogether. She got married young, had children young, and came to this country with nothing but hope and determination. Nobody ever expected anything from Rosa except hard work. And she had given them that. She had worked in factories, in restaurants, in hotels. When she finally landed the cleaning job at the college, her family was relieved. It was stable. It had benefits. It was honest work. What more could someone like Rosa want? But late at night, alone in those empty classrooms, Rosa wanted more. She wanted to understand. She wanted to learn. She wanted to prove to herself that her mind was just as good as anyone else's, even if she didn't have the fancy degrees hanging on the wall. The learning process was brutal at first. She didn't know the proper names for anything. She didn't understand the notation. She would spend an entire week trying to figure out what a single symbol meant. But Rosa was patient. She had learned patience from years of difficult work. She treated each equation like a puzzle, and she loved puzzles. She started collecting discarded textbooks from the trash bins. Professors would throw away old editions when new ones came out. Students would abandon books at the end of the semester. Rosa would fish them out, take them home, and study them page by page. She taught herself to read the mathematical language slowly, like learning a new alphabet. Sometimes she would peek through the small windows in the classroom doors while lectures were happening. She would watch how the professors explained concepts, how they moved through problems step by step. She couldn't hear everything, but she could see. And seeing was enough. Her cart became her mobile classroom. Hidden under the cleaning supplies were her notebooks, her collected textbooks, a few pens and pencils she had found. During her breaks, she would sit in empty classrooms and work through problems by the dim light of the hallway. Rosa's family didn't know about any of this. Her daughter thought she was working overtime. Her son thought she was just tired all the time. How could she explain it to them? They wouldn't understand why she was wasting time on math when she could be resting. They would think she was being foolish. A woman her age with no education, thinking she could learn calculus. They would laugh. Not meanly, but they would laugh. So Rosa kept it secret. Her notebook stayed hidden. Her studying happened in the quiet hours when nobody was watching. And slowly, incredibly, she began to understand. Basic algebra became easy. Geometry made sense. She moved into trigonometry, then early calculus. Each level was harder than the last, but each level also felt like climbing a mountain and seeing a new view at the top. The professors still didn't notice her. They still talked over her, around her, through her. But Rosa was noticing them. She was learning from them. She was becoming educated in the most unusual classroom imaginable. The whole building was her university, and the trash bins and whiteboards were her teachers. By her 15th year at the college, Rosa had filled 23 notebooks with mathematical problems and solutions. She could work through derivatives and integrals. She understood limits and continuity. She had taught herself what most people needed years of formal education to learn. But nobody knew. Nobody suspected. She was still just the cleaning lady, still invisible, still unimportant in everyone's eyes but her own. That was about to change in a way Rosa could never have imagined. One Tuesday evening, an arrogant professor would make a joke that would expose her secret to the world. But Rosa didn't know that yet. On this particular evening, she was just pushing her yellow bucket down the hallway, ready for another night of cleaning and learning, ready for another night of being invisible. Professor Richard Calloway was having a terrible day. His morning coffee had been cold. His car wouldn't start. And now at 7 in the evening, he was stuck in a review session with 6 graduate students who apparently couldn't solve a differential equation if their lives depended on it. He stood at the whiteboard, marker in hand, glaring at the problem he had written 30 minutes ago. It wasn't even that difficult. This was material they should have mastered months ago. Yet here they sat, staring at their notebooks like the answer would magically appear. "Come on, people," Richard said, his voice dripping with frustration. "This is basic stuff. If you can't handle this, how do you expect to pass your comprehensive exams?" The students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One of them, a young man named David, raised his hand tentatively. "Professor, could you maybe show us the first few steps? I think we're getting stuck on how to set up the substitution." Richard sighed dramatically. He hated when students asked him to just give them the answer. That wasn't learning. That was hand-holding. These were graduate students, for crying out loud. They should be able to figure this out. "No," he said flatly. "You need to work through this yourselves. Use your brains. That's what they're for." The room fell into an awkward silence. The students bent over their papers again, pencils scratching weakly. Richard could tell they were just pretending to work now, hoping he would eventually give in and solve it for them. It was pathetic, really. He heard the squeak of wheels in the hallway. The cleaning lady. He had seen her around for years but never really paid attention. She was just part of the background, like the posters on the wall or the broken clock that had been stuck at 3:15 for the past 2 years. Rosa pushed her cart into the room quietly. She always tried to be as unobtrusive as possible during these evening sessions. She would start in the back corner, working her way forward slowly, hoping to finish before the class ended. Richard watched her for a moment, and then a thought occurred to him. A mean thought. The kind of thought that feels funny in your head before you realize how cruel it actually is. "You know what?" he said loudly, causing all the students to look up. "Maybe we're going about this the wrong way. Maybe we need a fresh perspective." He walked toward Rosa, who had just started wiping down desks in the back row. She looked up, surprised to be addressed directly. "Excuse me," Richard said, his voice carrying that particular tone of condescension that certain people use when speaking to service workers. "Do you think you could help us out with something?" Rosa straightened up, confused. "Sir? We have a little math problem here that my brilliant graduate students can't seem to solve. Perhaps you'd like to take a crack at it." The students looked at each other uncomfortably. A few of them smiled nervously, not sure if the professor was being serious or not. One student, a woman named Jennifer, looked genuinely uncomfortable with where this was going. Rosa felt her face grow hot. She understood exactly what was happening. She had seen this kind of thing before. The professor was making fun of her, using her as an example to shame his students. Look, even the cleaning lady could do better than you, except he didn't actually expect her to be able to do anything. That was the joke. I don't want to interrupt your class, Rosa said quietly, trying to back away. Oh, it's no interruption at all, Richard continued, warming to his cruel joke. Please come up to the board. Show these students how it's done. A few of the students laughed now, though the sound was uncomfortable. Jennifer looked down at her desk, her face red. She clearly wanted no part of this. Professor Calloway, maybe we should just… Jennifer started, but Richard cut her off. Nonsense. Come on, don't be shy. Let's see what you've got. Rosa stood there, holding her cleaning cloth, facing a choice. She could refuse. She could make an excuse and leave the room. She could protect her secret and maintain her invisibility. That would be the safe choice. The smart choice, but something inside Rosa was burning. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was anger. 15 years of being invisible. 15 years of being talked down to, ignored, dismissed. 15 years of people assuming she was stupid because she pushed a mop. She looked at the equation on the board. It was a differential equation, and not a particularly easy one. But she had seen this type before. She had worked through similar problems in her notebooks just last week. Okay, Rosa said quietly. I'll try. Richard's smile widened. This was going exactly as he planned. The students would see her fail, feel embarrassed for underestimating the problem's difficulty, and hopefully work harder. It was a teaching moment. At least that's what he told himself. Rosa set down her cleaning supplies and walked to the front of the room. Her hands were shaking slightly as she picked up the marker. The board seemed enormous up close. All those eyes watching her, waiting for her to fail. She studied the equation for a moment. Her mind was racing, but not with panic, with calculation. She could see the path forward. She knew what needed to be done. Richard stood off to the side, arms crossed, waiting for the inevitable moment when she would turn around and admit she couldn't do it. Then he would solve it himself, make his point, and everyone could move on. But Rosa didn't turn around. Instead, she started writing. Slowly at first, her handwriting shaky from nerves, but as she worked through the first steps, something changed. Her hand steadied. Her confidence grew. The numbers and symbols flowed from her marker like water. She worked through the substitution that David had asked about earlier. She transformed the equation into a simpler form. She integrated both sides. She solved for the constant using the initial conditions that were given. The room was completely silent now. The uncomfortable laughter had died away. The students were leaning forward, watching in disbelief. Richard's smile had frozen on his face. Rosa stepped back from the board after about 5 minutes. She had worked through the entire problem. And unless she was very mistaken, she had gotten it right. I think that's the answer, she said softly, setting down the marker. Nobody spoke. David pulled out his calculator and started checking her work. Jennifer was frantically copying down the solution, her eyes wide. Another student had pulled up a math software program on his laptop and was inputting the values. Richard moved closer to the board. His expression had shifted from smug amusement to complete confusion. He traced through her steps with his eyes, looking for the mistake he was certain must be there. But there was no mistake. Not only had Rosa solved the problem correctly, but she had done it using a method that was actually more elegant than the approach Richard had planned to show them. She had seen a shortcut he had missed. Her solution was cleaner, simpler, more beautiful. Where did you… Richard started, then stopped. His face had gone pale. How did you… Who taught you this? Rosa felt tears prickling at her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not now. Nobody taught me. I taught myself. That's impossible, Richard said, but his voice lacked conviction. The evidence was right there on the board in front of him. I watch. I read. I study, Rosa said simply, every night for many years. The equations on the boards, the books in the trash, the lectures through the windows. I learn. One of the students, David, spoke up. Professor, she's right. Her solution is perfect, and honestly, it's better than the approach you showed us last week on a similar problem. Richard looked at David, then back at Rosa. then at the board again. His entire understanding of the world seemed to be rearranging itself in real time. This wasn't supposed to happen. Cleaning ladies didn't solve differential equations. People without education didn't teach themselves advanced calculus. The natural order of things didn't work this way, but apparently it did. "I should finish cleaning," Rosa said quietly. She picked up her cloth and walked back to her cart, her legs shaky. Behind her, the room erupted into whispered conversation. Jennifer stood up and approached Rosa as she started cleaning again. "That was amazing," she said sincerely. "I've been studying math for 6 years in university, and you just made that look easy." Rosa didn't know what to say. She just nodded and continued wiping down desks. Richard stood at the front of the room, staring at the equation Rosa had solved. He had wanted to teach his students a lesson tonight. He had succeeded, but not in the way he had intended. The lesson wasn't for them. It was for him. And he was just beginning to understand how badly he had misjudged everything. Rosa couldn't sleep that night. She kept replaying the scene in her mind. The way Professor Calloway's face had changed from mockery to shock. The whispers of the students. The feeling of the marker in her hand as she wrote on that board. She had exposed herself. After 15 years of keeping her secret safe, she had thrown it all away in a moment of anger and pride. What had she been thinking? At 5:30 in the morning, she gave up on sleep and made herself coffee. Her small apartment was quiet. Her daughter lived across town with her own family now. Her son was away at trade school. It was just Rosa and her thoughts. She wondered if she still had a job. Maybe Professor Calloway had complained to someone. Maybe they thought she had been wasting time studying instead of cleaning. Maybe they didn't want a cleaning lady who was too educated, too noisy, too visible. When Rosa arrived at work that evening, she clocked in nervously and headed straight for her cart. She decided to avoid the mathematics building entirely tonight. She would start with the administration building instead. Stay out of sight. Let the whole thing blow over. But the universe had other plans. She had barely started cleaning the first hallway when her supervisor, Mr. Peterson, found her. He was a kind man usually, but he looked serious today. "Rosa, can you come with me for a minute?" Her heart sank. This was it. She was being fired. They walked in silence to the administrative offices. Mr. Peterson led her to a small conference room. Inside, several people were waiting. Professor Calloway was there, looking uncomfortable. There were 2 other professors she recognized from the math department. And there was a woman in a business suit who Rosa didn't know at all. "Please sit down," the woman said with a warm smile. "I'm Dr. Angela Torres, the department head for mathematics. We wanted to talk to you about what happened last night." Rosa sat down slowly, her hands folded in her lap. Here it comes, she thought. The lecture about staying in her place. The warning about disrupting classes. But Dr. Torres didn't look angry. She looked curious, excited even. "Professor Calloway told me what happened," Dr. Torres continued, "and I have to admit I didn't believe him at first. So I did a little investigating. I checked the security footage from the building over the past few months." Rosa's stomach twisted. They had been watching her? Dr. Torres pulled out a tablet and turned it toward Rosa. On the screen was a video, time-stamped from 2 weeks ago. It showed Rosa in an empty classroom, sitting at a desk during her break, working through a problem in her notebook. The footage was grainy, but you could clearly see her working, erasing, working again. "I found hours of footage like this," Dr. Torres said. "You studying alone in empty classrooms, taking notes from the whiteboards, reading textbooks during your breaks. Rosa, how long have you been doing this?" Rosa's voice was barely a whisper. "About 12 years. Seriously, I mean, the first 3 years I was just trying to understand." One of the other professors, an older man with white hair, leaned forward. "Do you realize what you've accomplished? Most people need 4 years of university just to reach the level you demonstrated last night. And you taught yourself? With no formal instruction?" "I watched the lectures," Rosa explained. "Through the windows. And I read the books people throw away. And the problems on the boards, they're like puzzles. If you work on them long enough, they start to make sense." Professor Calloway finally spoke. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "Rosa, I owe you an apology. What I did last night was cruel and unprofessional. I was using you to make a point to my students, and I'm deeply ashamed of that." Rosa looked at him. She could see the sincerity in his face. "You didn't know. That's not an excuse," he said firmly. I made assumptions about you based on your job, your appearance, your background. I was completely wrong, and I'm sorry. Dr. Torres spoke again. Rosa, we'd like to make you a proposition. But first I need to understand something. Why? Why go through all this effort? What made you want to learn mathematics? Rosa thought about the question. How could she explain it? The hunger she felt for knowledge. The way numbers made sense in a world that so often didn't. The feeling of accomplishment when she solved a problem. When I was a little girl, Rosa began slowly, my teacher told me I was smart. Just once she told me that. Then I had to leave school and nobody ever said it again. My whole life, people looked at me and saw someone who works with her hands, someone who cleans, and that's fine. It's honest work. I'm not ashamed, she paused, gathering her thoughts. But at night, when I'm alone with these equations, I feel like that little girl again. The smart one. The one who could have been something different if life had been different. I don't study math because I want to be someone else. I study it because it helps me remember who I always was. The room was silent. Dr. Torres had tears in her eyes. Even Professor Calloway looked moved. Well, Dr. Torres said, clearing her throat, here's what we'd like to propose. We want to test you. Formally, we want to see exactly what level you've reached, and depending on the results, we'd like to offer you admission to the college as a student. Rosa's heart stopped. What? You've clearly done the work of someone who has completed at least 2 years of university mathematics, Dr. Torres explained. If our assessment confirms that, we can offer you admission with advanced standing. We have adult education programs. We have scholarships for non-traditional students. You wouldn't have to pay for it. But my job, Rosa said. I need to work. I have bills. You could keep your job. Mr. Peterson spoke up for the first time. We'd adjust your schedule. Maybe you work fewer hours, take classes during the day. We'll figure it out. Rosa couldn't believe what she was hearing. Go to college? Her? At her age? The white-haired professor smiled. Rosa, do you know what most of us do when we discover talent? We nurture it. We develop it. What you've done is extraordinary. You have a gift for mathematics. It would be a crime to let that gift go to waste. But Rosa started, then stopped. She was going to say, I'm just a cleaning lady, but that wasn't true. She was a cleaning lady and a mathematician. She was both. She had always been both. I'm scared, she said honestly. What if I can't do it? What if I get into a real classroom and everyone realizes I don't belong there? Professor Calloway leaned forward. Rosa, you solved a problem last night that half my graduate students couldn't touch. You belong in a classroom more than most people who are already there. Dr. Torres stood up and held out her hand. Think about it. Take a few days. We'll schedule the assessment for next week if you're interested. No pressure. But Rosa, please know that we see you now. We really see you. And what we see is remarkable. Rosa shook her hand, still in a daze. When she left the conference room, she felt like she was floating. Could this really be happening? Over the next few days, word spread through the mathematics department. The professors started leaving problems on their boards specifically for Rosa, more challenging ones. They wanted to see what she could do. Every morning, they would return to find her solutions, worked out in careful detail on scratch paper left on their desks. Rosa became a mystery, a legend. The students started talking about her. Have you heard about the cleaning lady who knows calculus? The story grew with each retelling. One evening, Rosa was cleaning Professor Chen's classroom when she found a note on the board. It wasn't an equation. It was a message. Rosa, we never knew you were watching us teach, but you taught us something far more important. You reminded us why we became mathematicians in the first place. Thank you. The mathematics faculty. Rosa stood in that empty classroom and cried. Not sad tears, happy tears, grateful tears. After 15 years of being invisible, she had finally been seen. And what people saw wasn't what she had feared. They didn't see someone who didn't belong. They saw someone who had belonged all along. She just needed to believe it herself now. The test was in 3 days. 3 days to decide if she was brave enough to step out of the shadows and into the light. 3 days to choose between the safety of invisibility and the terrifying possibility of becoming who she was always meant to be. Rosa picked up her marker and wrote on the board, underneath the faculty's message, I'll take the test. Thank you for seeing me. Then she went back to her cart, picked up her mop and continued cleaning. Because no matter what happened next, this was still her job. This was still her building. And these floors weren't going to clean themselves. The night before the test, Rosa couldn't eat dinner. Her stomach was in knots. She sat at her small kitchen table, surrounded by her notebooks, flipping through pages of equations she had solved over the years. 12 years of work, thousands of problems, all leading to this one moment. What if it wasn't enough? Her daughter, Carmen, called that evening. Rosa had finally told her family what was happening. Carmen had been shocked, then concerned, then supportive in that worried way that adult children get when their parents do something unexpected. "Mom, are you sure about this?" Carmen asked over the phone. "I mean, it's wonderful, but you're 52 years old. College is for young people. What if it's too hard?" Rosa had heard the same concern from her son, from her friends, from a voice in her own head that sounded suspiciously like her father from years ago. Too old, too late, too much. "Carmen, I've been doing the work for 12 years already," Rosa said quietly. "The only difference is now I might get credit for it. And if I fail, well, then at least I tried." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You're braver than I am, Mom." "No," Rosa said. "I'm just tired of being afraid." The test was scheduled for 9 in the morning in a small classroom in the math building. Rosa arrived at 8:30 wearing her best clothes, a simple dress she usually saved for church. She felt strange walking into the building during the day, when it was full of students and life. She had only ever seen it at night, empty and quiet. Dr. Torres was waiting for her, along with Professor Calloway and the white-haired professor, whose name Rosa had learned was Dr. Raymond Mills. He was semi-retired but still the most respected mathematician in the department. "Good morning, Rosa," Dr. Torres said with an encouraging smile. "How are you feeling?" "Nervous," Rosa admitted. "Good," Dr. Mills said with a kind smile. "That means you care. Now let me explain how this will work. We've prepared a comprehensive exam covering algebra, trigonometry, calculus, and some differential equations. It's the same test we give to students who want to challenge our courses for credit." He handed her a thick packet of papers. Rosa's hands trembled slightly as she took it. "You'll have 4 hours," Professor Calloway added. "Take your time. Show all your work. And Rosa, just do your best. That's all anyone can ask." They left her alone in the classroom. Rosa looked at the clock. 9 modern a.m. She opened the test booklet and began to read. The first section was algebra. Rosa smiled. These problems were old friends. She had solved hundreds like them. Her pencil flew across the page, her confidence growing with each completed problem. The trigonometry section was harder, but still manageable. She had struggled with trig at first, teaching herself from a water-damaged textbook she had found in the recycling bin 3 years ago, but she had persevered. And now the sin and cosine waves made sense to her like old songs she could hum by heart. When she reached the calculus section, Rosa took a deep breath. This was where it mattered. This was the material that Professor Calloway's graduate students had been studying. She read through the first problem. It was about related rates, a ladder sliding down a wall. She needed to find how fast the top of the ladder was moving. Rosa closed her eyes and visualized it. She could see the ladder, the wall, the triangle they formed. She could see how the triangle changed as the ladder slid. The mathematics flowed from that visualization. Derivatives. Chain rule. Solve for the rate. She worked steadily through the calculus problems, pausing only to shake out her cramping hand. Integration techniques. Optimization problems. Area under curves. Each problem was like a conversation with an old friend. The final section was differential equations. This was the advanced stuff, the material that had taken Rosa years to understand. She had worked through these types of problems just last month, but seeing them on an official test made them feel different, more important, more real. 2 hours had passed. Rosa was halfway through the exam. She took a moment to stretch, to breathe, to remind herself that she knew this material. She had earned this knowledge through thousands of hours of study. Nobody could take that away from her. She returned to the test with renewed focus. One problem at a time. Show your work. Check your answers. Move forward. At 12:45 p.m., Rosa wrote down her final answer and set down her pencil. Her hand was aching. Her back was sore from hunching over the desk. But she was done. She gathered up her papers and walked to the door. Dr. Torres was waiting in the hallway working on her laptop. "All finished?" Dr. Torres asked, looking up. Rosa nodded and handed over her test. I did my best, that's all we can ask. Listen, the grading will take a few days. We want to be thorough. Are you working tonight? Yes, same schedule. Dr. Torres smiled. Then I'll see you around the building. Try not to worry too much, try not to worry. That was like asking water not to be wet. Rosa went home and tried to distract herself with cleaning her apartment, calling Carmen, watching television. Nothing worked. Her mind kept drifting back to the test. Had she made mistakes? Had she shown enough work? What if she had misremembered a formula? At work that night, Rosa found it hard to concentrate. She kept mopping the same spot over and over until it practically shined like a mirror. When she reached the mathematics building, she noticed something different. The whiteboards in every classroom had messages written on them. From the professors, from students who had heard her story. Good luck, Rosa. You've got this. Thanks for inspiring us. The cleaning lady who taught herself calculus, legend. Rosa felt tears forming but blinked them back. These messages meant the world to her. For so long she had been invisible. Now people saw her, encouraged her, believed in her. 3 days passed. 3 very long days of work and worry and waiting. On the 4th day, Rosa received a call during her lunch break. It was Dr. Torres. Rosa, can you come to my office this afternoon? Around 2 o'clock? Rosa's heart was pounding. Yes, I can. Is everything okay? Just come to my office. We need to talk. The afternoon felt endless. Rosa left work early, something she almost never did, and drove to the college. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Dr. Torres's office was on the 3rd floor. The door was open. Inside, Dr. Torres, Professor Calloway, and Dr. Mills were all waiting. The 3 of them looked serious. Rosa's heart sank. She had failed. Please sit down, Dr. Torres said. Rosa sat. She prepared herself for disappointment. She had tried. That was what mattered. She had tried. Dr. Torres picked up a paper from her desk. Rosa recognized her test covered in red marks. Rosa, we've finished grading your examination. Dr. Torres began. All 3 of us reviewed it independently to make sure we were being fair and accurate. Rosa nodded, unable to speak. Your algebra and trigonometry sections were perfect. 100% on both. Rosa blinked in surprise. Your calculus section... Dr. Torres paused and Rosa's heart sank again. You scored 94%. You made one small error in the implicit differentiation problem, but otherwise your work was flawless. Wait, 94%? That was good. That was really good. Dr. Mills spoke up, his eyes twinkling. The differential equation section was the most interesting. You solved every problem correctly. But what fascinated us was your methodology. You used techniques that are normally taught in advanced courses. Where did you learn those? I figured them out, Rosa said. Some of the standard methods seemed too complicated. So I looked for shortcuts. Professor Calloway laughed. Shortcuts. Rosa, you independently developed solution strategies that took professional mathematicians years to perfect. Your work isn't just correct. It's elegant. Dr. Torres leaned forward. Rosa, your overall score was 96%. That's higher than most of our math majors score on this exam, and they've had years of formal instruction. Rosa felt dizzy. 96%? She had passed? No, she had excelled. Based on these results, Dr. Torres continued, we're offering you admission to Riverside Community College as a mathematics major with advanced standing. You'll be able to skip the first 2 years of coursework and start at the junior level. We're also offering you a full scholarship that covers tuition, books, and supplies. The room seemed to spin. Rosa gripped the arms of her chair. There's more, Dr. Mills said gently. Your story has gotten attention. The local newspaper wants to interview you. The college president wants to meet you. But Rosa, you need to understand something. This is going to change your life. Once this story gets out, you won't be invisible anymore. Everyone will know who you are. Rosa thought about that. 15 years of invisibility. 15 years of being overlooked. And now the chance to be seen. Really seen. I'm ready, she said, and she meant it. The newspaper article came out on a Thursday. The headline read, From Mop to Mathematics, Local Cleaning Woman's Secret Education Stuns University. Rosa's phone didn't stop ringing. Friends she hadn't spoken to in years called to congratulate her. People from her church wanted to throw her a party. Carmen called 3 times in one day, alternating between pride and worry. "Mom, there's a reporter from the city paper who wants to talk to you. And someone from a TV station called me. This is getting big." Rosa was overwhelmed. She had expected maybe a small mention in the college newsletter. She hadn't expected this. The story seemed to touch something in people. Within a week, it had been picked up by regional news, then national news. Rosa's face was suddenly everywhere. The attention was uncomfortable at first. Rosa wasn't used to being the center of anything, but slowly she began to understand what her story meant to people, especially to people like her. Letters started arriving at the college addressed to her, dozens of them, then hundreds. A woman from Michigan wrote, "I'm a 58-year-old cashier who never finished high school. Your story made me cry. If you can do it, maybe I can too." A man from Texas, "I work night security and always dreamed of getting an education. I thought I was too old. You proved I'm not." A teenager from Florida, "My guidance counselor said I wasn't smart enough for college. I'm showing him this article. Thank you for proving people wrong." Rosa read every letter. She cried over many of them. She had thought her journey was just about her own education, her own dreams. She hadn't realized it could inspire others, but not everyone was supportive. Some people sent cruel messages. They said she was too old, that she was taking opportunities from younger students, that a cleaning lady should know her place. Rosa read those letters too, and they hurt, but they also reminded her of every person who had ever underestimated her. Every teacher who had given up on her. Every employer who had seen only her hands and not her mind. Those letters made her more determined. Her first day of classes was in September. Rosa walked onto campus as a student for the first time. She was carrying a backpack she had borrowed from Carmen, filled with brand new textbooks. She was 52 years old, enrolled in advanced calculus and linear algebra. Professor Calloway was teaching the calculus class. When Rosa walked in, the other students, most of them in their 20s, stared. They had heard about her. How could they not have? Her story had been everywhere. "Good morning, everyone," Professor Calloway said. "I see some new faces today. Welcome to Advanced Calculus. This class will challenge you, but I have confidence that everyone here has what it takes to succeed." His eyes met Rosa's and he smiled. It was a genuine smile, the kind that said, "I'm sorry for who I was before, and I'm proud of who you're becoming." The first few weeks were hard, not because of the mathematics, Rosa could handle that, but because of everything else. Learning to use the online portal for assignments, figuring out how to use the library system, understanding the rhythm of academic life. All the things that traditional students learned over years, Rosa had to pick up quickly. And there was another challenge. The other students didn't quite know how to relate to her. She was older than their parents. She had lived an entirely different life. During group projects, there would be awkward moments when they'd want to discuss parties or dating drama, then remember Rosa was there and fall silent. But slowly, things changed. Rosa became known not as the cleaning lady or the famous one, but just as Rosa, the student who always showed up early, the one who explained concepts patiently to classmates who were struggling, the one who brought homemade cookies to study groups. One evening, a young student named Tyler approached her after class. He was failing, and he knew it. "Rosa, can I ask you something? How do you do it? How do you understand this stuff so easily?" Rosa thought about his question. "It's not easy for me, Tyler. I've just been doing it longer than you think. Every equation I solve now, I've probably tried to solve 50 times before in my notebooks. I've failed more than you can imagine." "But you keep going," Tyler said. "Yes, because the alternative is giving up. And I've learned that giving up is the only real failure." Tyler became one of her study partners. So did Jennifer, the graduate student who had been in Professor Calloway's class that first night. Jennifer was working on her master's thesis and would often discuss complex problems with Rosa over coffee. Their friendship surprised them both, but it worked. Rosa still worked her cleaning job, but with reduced hours. She needed the income, and honestly, she needed the connection to who she had been. Some nights she would be studying in the library, and then later that same night she'd be mopping the floors of that very same building. The other cleaners treated her differently now. Some were proud. Others were resentful. Rosa understood both reactions. At the end of her first semester, Rosa received straight A's. Dr. Torres called her into the office to congratulate her. "You know," Dr. Torres said, "we've been getting calls from other universities. Your story has inspired programs across the country for non-traditional students, adult education programs, outreach to working-class communities. You've started something bigger than just your own education. I didn't mean to start anything, Rosa said. I just wanted to learn. That's what makes it powerful. You didn't do this for fame or recognition. You did it because you love mathematics. That authenticity resonates with people. As Rosa's second semester began, she was asked to give a talk to incoming students. She was terrified. Public speaking had never been part of her plan, but she stood up in front of 200 students and told her story. She told them about being the little girl whose teacher said she was smart, about leaving school to help her family, about years of thinking she had missed her chance, about finding those equations on the whiteboards and feeling that old spark reignite. I'm not special, Rosa told them. I'm not a genius. I'm just someone who refused to believe it was too late. Whatever dream you have, whatever goal you're afraid to chase because you think you're too old, too poor, too unprepared, I'm here to tell you that you're wrong. It's never too late. It's never impossible. You just have to be brave enough to try. The students gave her a standing ovation. Afterward, dozens of them came up to thank her. One young woman, tears streaming down her face, said, "My mom cleans houses. She always told me to study hard so I wouldn't have to do what she does. But you've shown me there's no shame in any honest work. You've shown me that where you start doesn't determine where you end up." 2 years passed. Rosa continued her studies while working part-time. Her story faded from the news, replaced by newer headlines. But its impact remained. The college had established a scholarship in her name for working adults returning to education. 3 other cleaning staff at the college had enrolled in classes inspired by her example. Professor Calloway had changed too. He was known now as one of the most compassionate professors in the department. He never forgot the lesson Rosa had taught him about assumptions and invisible brilliance. He looked at every student differently now, wondering what hidden potential might be there waiting to be recognized. In May, Rosa walked across the stage at graduation. She was wearing a cap and gown. Her daughter and son were in the audience crying. Her grandchildren held a banner that read, "Way to go, Grandma." She received her Bachelor of Science in Mathematics with high honors. As she accepted her diploma, the entire auditorium stood and cheered. Not because she was famous, but because she represented something powerful: hope, determination, the possibility of transformation. After graduation, Rosa was offered several opportunities. She could pursue a master's degree. She could work for a tech company. She could become a tutor for wealthy students willing to pay premium rates. She turned them all down. Instead, Rosa accepted a teaching position at an adult education center in the poorest part of the city. She taught mathematics to people like her: high school dropouts, immigrants, single parents working multiple jobs, people who thought education wasn't for them. On her first day as a teacher, Rosa wrote her name on the board. Then she turned to her class: 15 tired faces, people who had come straight from work, people who were scared and hopeful and uncertain. "My name is Rosa," she said. 20 years ago, I was cleaning this building at night. I never finished middle school, but I loved mathematics and I taught myself. If you had told me then that I would be standing here as your teacher, I would have laughed. I would have said it was impossible." She paused, looking at each student. "I'm here to tell you that impossible is just a word that other people use to stop you from trying. So let's make a deal. You bring the effort, I'll bring the knowledge. Together we'll prove the impossible wrong." One student, an older woman who reminded Rosa of herself, raised her hand tentatively. "Miss Rosa, is it really true you learned all this by yourself? From cleaning whiteboards?" Rosa smiled. "Yes, but I want to be honest with you. It was hard. Really hard. There were nights I cried because I couldn't understand something. Days I wanted to quit. Times I felt stupid and useless and too old to change my life." She walked to the whiteboard and picked up a marker. "But here's what I learned. Intelligence isn't about where you start. It's about refusing to stop. It's about showing up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." She wrote an equation on the board, a simple one, the kind she had first solved years ago in her tiny apartment. "This is where we begin," Rosa said, "not with calculus or advanced theory. We start simple. We build slowly. We learn together. And if you're patient, if you're dedicated, if you believe in yourself even when others don't, you'll be amazed at how far you can go." She looked at her students. These beautiful, hopeful, scared people who were brave enough to try. Who's ready to learn? She asked. Every hand in the room went up. Rosa smiled. This was where she belonged. Not famous, not celebrated, just teaching. Just sharing what she had learned through thousands of hours of secret study in empty classrooms. Just proving, one student at a time, that it's never too late to become who you were always meant to be. Years later, people would ask Rosa about that night when Professor Calloway had mocked her. When she had walked to that whiteboard and changed her life, they would ask if she was angry, if she held a grudge. No, Rosa would always say. He gave me a gift that night even though he didn't mean to. He gave me the chance to prove to myself what I could do. Sometimes we need someone to doubt us before we can believe in ourselves. And besides, she would add with a smile, he became one of my greatest advocates. People can change. I did. Why can't he? Rosa kept all of her old notebooks, 23 of them, filled with equations and mistakes and breakthroughs. She would show them to her students sometimes to prove that learning is messy. That genius isn't about getting everything right the first time. It's about trying again and again until something finally clicks. On the wall of her classroom, she hung a photo. It showed her on graduation day wearing her cap and gown. But next to it, she hung another photo. This one showed her at 22, holding a mop, tired but smiling. Both photos, she would tell her students, showed the same person. A mathematician. Someone who loved numbers and patterns and the beauty of logical thought. The only difference was that in one photo, the world could see it. In the other, only she knew. Don't wait for the world to recognize your worth, Rosa would tell her classes. Recognize it yourself, learn, grow, study, not because someone gives you permission, but because you owe it to yourself. You owe it to that little kid inside you who was told they were smart, just once and never forgot it. And in that classroom, in that poor neighborhood, with those students who society had written off, Rosa taught mathematics. But more than that, she taught belief. She taught possibility. She taught that a title doesn't make you smart. Curiosity and persistence do. She was always a mathematician. From that first night, she copied an equation into her notebook. The diploma just made it official. The rest of the world finally caught up to what Rosa had always known. She belonged.